Hey everybody, welcome back to the Things Virtual Conference. Next up is Alexander Overtoom from the Things Industries. He's going to be talking to us today about building ROI positive LoRaWAN deployments. Alexander, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So in a second, I'm going to have you kind of just take over. Feel free to give a quick introduction about yourself, share your screen, and then take your time through the presentation. Anybody out there who has questions during this presentation, feel free to leave them in the chat on YouTube, and I'll be sure to pick them up, and we'll have a nice little discussion afterwards before we finish up. So, Alexander, over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, my name is Alexander Overtoom. I'm working for the Things Industries. I'm responsible for all the business development activities, and I'm also in charge of running a few of the bigger LoRaWAN implementation projects for our customers. And yeah, I mean, we're experiencing a lot in the everyday, let's say, reality of deploying LoRaWAN projects, of which I want to share with you a little bit today. So if all is good, you can see my screen right now. And today, yeah, I'm gonna share with you our experience in building positive business cases with LoRaWAN. And as I said, we have some experience. We've seen quite a number of screw-ups, projects that are in fact dead on arrival, failing hardware, whatever. We've seen it, and in fact, we've also been part of a few, which allows us actually to talk about it. And yeah, many of you here today are actually engineers, people who build stuff, software embedded engineers, hardware engineers, and that is super relevant for LoRaWAN because you are actually the one introducing new technologies into your companies. Because technology often finds its way bottom up. There is actually no corporate CEO that I know who would initiate a LoRaWAN project as a LoRaWAN project. It's always, actually almost always, the R&D or product development department who tries to understand the potential value a new technology can bring to, for example, business processes. So this change is initiated bottom up rather than top down. However, that CEO is mostly the customer, and he or she is looking at KPIs that may reflect problems in the business, and that will drive the introduction of new technology rather than actually pulling in a random new technologies just for the sake of introducing technology. So we need to be focusing on the problems in the business, and that can be operational waste, it can be lacking management information, it can be declining customer satisfaction, it can be a lack of know-how how products are being used, and that is usually a driver for the introduction of new technology in companies. And these metrics, they translate into cost. So LoRaWAN projects are aimed at improving business KPIs. Although we may take the technology as a starting point, but in fact it is the business benefits that should always be clear before anyone will make an investment decision into a new technology. So with that, I will try to explain today some of the commercial aspects that we see play a role in the decision-making process, and I'm going to share a little bit of our knowledge on what we see are the value drivers for starting LoRaWAN, but very importantly, what are the hidden costs of LoRaWAN, and how can we fix that going forward, because LoRaWAN is complex, we know that by now, and these projects, if you do a deployment, it has to last for a very long time. But yeah, it's hard because there are a lot of uncertainties, and it's hard to estimate what is coming. So just revisiting. We've seen the 7 key differentiating factors of LoRaWAN already a couple of times. But how do they actually translate into the business benefits? And if we look at ultra low power, the fact that it's ultra low power, your device is sleeping most of the time, uses very little battery, and this may have as a result the fact that a battery can actually outlive the technical lifespan of a device. Which means that you do not need to replace batteries throughout the project's life cycle. That is a cost saver that will actually bring down the operational cost of maintaining your network of devices. Then the fact that it's long range, so you need to have little infrastructure to actually be able to connect all your devices. Then public and private deployments. So it's not a secret. I mean, as the Things Industries, we are offering we are offering LoRaWAN as a private technology, private networking technology, and for us that is a way to reduce costs, because if you deploy your own private network, you can determine your own coverage, your own quality of service, and you don't have the marginal cost for each additional device or message that you send on a public network. Then, of course, firmware updates over the air. Why is that relevant? Because we promise that these devices will be in the field for a very long time. But in that time, you may be exposed to a security vulnerability, or you need to update the LoRaWAN stack because it's evolved further and you want to update the device. So in order to extend the device's life cycle or lifetime, you will need to be able to do firmware updates over the air. Then geolocation. You don't need GPS, which is more cost effective and will drain your battery less. Then end-to-end security. And deep indoor penetration, which helps you to reduce the number of gateways that you require. So we see that LoRaWAN can be ROI positive. In fact, there are many ingredients that will help you make it successful. And we see that LoRaWAN is being adopted in many verticals. Maybe some 150 million LoRa radios have been sold today, and hopefully the majority of those will have been deployed out in the field. And this is actually a very significant amount of radios. So we assume, many devices in the field, many proven business cases, many devices transmitting data and actually returning value to the investment that was made in it. So we're assuming a working technology. LoRaWAN has been around for a couple of years, and we see that the specifications are stable, which should be at the comfort of a lot of companies who want to deploy LoRaWAN. So we can check that box. The technology works, and also the business cases will work. However, we are also dealing with growth challenges, because we see that a lot of the deployments may still be in a proof of concept phase, and once companies or once deployment starts getting bigger, that will actually present a scaling issue. So we like to talk about economies of scale with LoRaWAN. And it's a nice concept, but you actually have to put a lot of work in it to make that happen. Because what you don't want is that your cost will grow along exponentially when your revenue actually grows only linearly. You want the exponential revenue with linear cost development. And the question is, how do we actually establish that? Because there are a lot of proofs of concept, but the number of really large scale deployments is slowly getting about. We're gonna, we're trying to help. Also, this session trying to help give you some understanding of the challenges that come into play when you start scaling, and. this is what we've learned, right? The scalability issues of LoRaWAN, and a few of our learnings from talking with customers over the past couple of years is here on this slide. And what we see is that IoT is actually IT. So almost always the LoRaWAN project becomes part of an existing IT system. So someone already has a meeting room planning tool, but only needs to add an occupancy sensor to enhance that system and, for example, to enhance the customer experience. So IoT is IT. Then customers want manageable cost. So we need to align with their revenue models, and we actually also need to align with their cost models because that's what they understand already. IoT is a plugin, so easy integration is key. Also, customers have already a lot of systems in place. They made their purchase for SAP, for Salesforce, for Mendix, for ServiceNow, and they want to reuse what is already there, and they want to reuse their legacy systems. So they just want to extend that with an IoT component, and that should be plug and play, right? The application landscape is already crowded enough, so IoT has to be a plugin, and it has to be as easy as a plugin. Then the deployment environment is very fragmented. So the context in which LoRaWAN is applied can be also very different across large enterprises, and the solution will also need to be able to work within a different, within a broad spectrum of context. Then, of course, security by design. I don't think that needs a lot of explanation. And then the developer ecosystem, which is also represented by you. This is relevant for large scale adoption and the technology finding its way into large enterprises. So these are, let's say, our 6 learnings that we're sharing with you, and I just want to go into. Like I was talking about return on investment. So if you break that down very simply, we're talking about value created from a LoRaWAN project versus the cost that it brings along. And this is very simple. And I want to keep it that simple. I just want to make a differentiation between different types of value that the customer can derive from a LoRaWAN project, because we are all looking for large-scale deployments, right? I mean, our business models are normally based on the number of devices sold, the number of gateways sold, but this is actually not always in line with what is valuable for a customer. So, for example, if one of our customers does ship management, and they manage ships, and their responsibility is to make sure that idle time of a large ship that does things in oil and gas, for example, that idle time of a big ship is prevented. And one of the use cases that is being deployed on one of those ships right now is that they're monitoring pumps that are powering the steering of that ship. And if 1 or 2 of those pumps breaks down, then the ship cannot be directed, cannot be steered anymore, which has as a result that there's idle time, and the idle time is extremely costly for these ships. But if you don't know the condition of these pumps that are so crucial for that steering mechanism, then you don't know what's happening, and you don't know whether you need to do preventive maintenance. And you could, apply a simple LoRaWAN sensor and do vibration monitoring of those pumps, and try to predict when something is about to break down or when something needs maintenance. And this may only account for 2 devices and 1 gateway, to put it simply, but the value to the customer is extremely high. So the advice is to search for the value that your customer is deriving from your solution. And often we look at the cost of production, and we do a markup when we decide on our pricing, or we look at competition and try to outprice our competition. But yeah, I think LoRaWAN doesn't necessarily sit in an extremely price-sensitive niche, depending on the type of solution that you're providing. So if you look for the high-value use cases, then also you can adopt your pricing to it. Of course, I mean, there are tons of use cases that you can plot along this scale, but it's interesting to bear this in mind. And just to give you an example about what the value drivers for example, pest control are. So what we are seeing is that the Signal they develop digital mousetraps, and this is actually going quite fast. I think they've deployed between I don't know, like 50,000 and 100,000 devices already on our networks. So there's a good reason to purchase these products, and one of these reasons is the reduction of operational cost. So in the old days, when you had the analog mousetrap, you would have a pest control company that would actually check all the mousetraps, send a field services person there to do the checkup, and then leave and do that every 2 or 3 months. But right now, if you just install the digital infrastructure, you can do that remotely. So that's going to have a drastic effect on your operational expenses. So that is a value driver. Another value driver can be compliancy with regulations. So we've seen hygiene control and pest control regulations coming up in the US and the EU, for example, which actually dictate better monitoring of pest nuisance in, for example, supermarkets, but also in hotels and restaurants, which is a driver to adopt different technology or different products. Then, of course, customer satisfaction, but also the fact that you can build new information services with the devices that are now collecting data. So, for example, if you're doing pest control in a hotel and you've plotted these mousetraps in every corner, then at some point it will hopefully become clear that there is a problem in a certain wing or a certain corner of the building, and you can go very direct to solving that issue. And that's new information that you did not have before, and you can actually build new information services on top of it. So I'm also seeing that time is not on my side. So let me go on to the cost side, because I think this is the most relevant part of the presentation. Because I want to talk about total cost of ownership. And total cost of ownership is very relevant because it's often poorly understood, and it's actually almost always underestimated. So, estimating your total cost of ownership is hard, and there is uncertainty, and some of the variables in your scenarios may only play out in the future, but you don't always know how they would do that. So, say that you're a systems integrator and you want to sell an end-to-end solution to large enterprise, right? That's the context now, and you're about to make an offer that you cannot refuse. So on the one hand, you want your estimation to stay cost-effective, to make the attractive offer, but on the other hand, you also don't want to be realistic, because if it turns out that cost is much higher than expected, it may backfire, and you may compromise contracts, and you also may compromise your credibility. So that's why you better understand the hidden costs of LoRaWAN deployments. So if we look at that now, this is a lot of information on one slide, but what I want to make clear with it is that the visible side of the total cost of ownership is everything that you can easily predict, right? On the level of devices, where you have your hardware engineering and your embedded engineering, on the radio network being the deployment of the gateways and the procurement of the gateways, the network server, your cloud platform where you have your application enablement, and then all the overhead of getting integrating an end-to-end solution. But there are many hidden costs, and I've actually only taken a few that I know from our recent experience. But also, please, if you feel you can complement this, let us know in the YouTube channel, because there must be many more, and I think it's a good thing to help each other and be clear about what are the hidden costs, what are the costs that you didn't estimate upfront when you were pitching for that project. So of course there are opportunity costs. You can also do something else rather than developing a bespoke feature for a specific customer, work on generic product features that may have a longer term to earn themselves back, but will actually, there's also a cost to it. Then the scalability issues. So it's very easy to onboard 10 or 100 devices, but what is going to happen when you actually need to onboard thousands or tens of thousands of devices? And how do these processes go? So those need skill. An SLA breach that can of course always happen. Then what we see is that companies also still have single points of failure in their architecture, where they rely on let's say suppliers that they cannot fully control, and this can have devastating effects that can actually even put the continuity of a product at risk if you don't manage these single points of failure. Then the real battery efficiency. So of course a lot is based on models and on tests, but what do you actually achieve? Are these devices really not sending more data than they really need? Then another potential source of costs is not following best practices. We've also seen this a couple of times, where, for example, the way that the LoRaWAN applications are implemented are actually causing, for example, message storms, because they don't have a proper randomized back-off delay, flooding the network server and causing potential downtime, which is a problem in the implementation of LoRaWAN, and that is something that needs to be thought through very well. This is really like at the drawing table. You need to be able to implement that already. Otherwise, things can go massively wrong. Of course, technical debt, which may backfire into doing rework or being less efficient, or not being able to update to newer versions. Then you have the process inefficiencies, like how do you exchange keys of a LoRaWAN device? This is often still based on. Okay, yeah. Let me finish this. I'll finish the slide. So the security breaches that may come. Then of course you have the invisibility of your assets. A major one is also vendor lock-in. This is also often not very well thought through, but in the procurement process, you need to make sure that your supplier is working with open standards, and you need to understand where the points in the value chain are that can actually lock you in. Just to give you an example, a proprietary packet forwarder on a gateway may make it difficult in the future to switch networks. Then, of course, the evolution of the LoRaWAN standard with increasing complexity and also backward compatibility. This is all putting overhead to your deployment. And then a commoditization of technology, which is also a risk because it may put your if you're not moving along, it may put your competitors at the first place. And yeah, if you know of any, or if you have experience with any hidden costs, please let us know in the YouTube channel. I'm afraid I will not be able to finish my presentation because we started a bit too late and we're a bit strict on time. So let me finish here by wishing you good luck. Please reach out to us. We've worked with many customers on proofs of concept. We know where things can go wrong, and we're happy to share our experience. What I will do also is share a slide deck with some of the best practices that we've assembled from our experience. So I'll try to post that on the YouTube channel in a while from now.
Great, thank you, Alexander. That was fantastic. Yeah, any questions or any follow up for him? Please feel free to put it into the chat, and he'll be able to engage you there. But other than that, thanks for your time, and enjoy the rest of your week.